governor, the right certificate. I was reviewing my father's Federal Reserve notes I inherited, so I bought the new currency book there from Whitman, and I noticed a few people who weren't presidents on paper money, more specifically gold certificates, and one was Silas Wright Jr., the 14th governor of New York, and he ended up on a $50 gold certificate. So it prompted my curiosity, and this is what I discovered. I'm sure some of you probably know this, but I didn't. I never knew a New York governor was on a $50 gold piece. And Silas Wright was born in May 24th, 1795 in Amherst, Mass, and attended Middlebury College in 1815 and attained admission to the bar and practiced in Canton in New York and started his political career serving as St. Lawrence County surrogate judge, and then he was elected to the New York State Senate. From there, he was a supporter of Martin Van Buren and the New York Democratic Party of that time. He was elected then to the U.S. House from 1827 to 1829. But what turned out, I think, to be more consequential is he was state controller from 1829 to 1833, because back then the New York controller and Wall Street and the New York banks were as powerful as the second bank of the United States. And then he ran for U.S. Senator in 1836 to 1844 and became Senate Finance Chair for his term there in the United States Senate. And then he primaried, Martin Van Buren lost the Democratic primary to Polk in 1844, and Silas was offered the vice president's post to draw Van Buren supporters to Polk, but he declined. So he ran for and was elected the 14th governor of New York, serving from January 1, 1845 to 1846, and defeated in his reelection. And after that, he died shortly thereafter, back up in Canton at 52 years old. And his house is now the Historical Association Museum up in St. Lawrence County, if you get up that way. And there's a copy of the bill. And what I found interesting on the bill is here, it's got the act is right on the bill under Chapter 200, Section 12 of the Act of July 12, 1882. Among some of the other things. I just found the bill, the artwork on the bill I found very interesting. And of course, it went directly onto my on list. And then the back, I just like that golden orange color they put on it. But that brought me to thinking, how did a governor from New York end up on paper money when most of them are dead presidents? I guess, it came, like I said, Section 12 of the Act, July 12, 1882, created the gold certificates. It authorized $100 million worth. I guess I missed a comma there, one too many. And it seems the act left it up to the Secretary of the Treasury as the sole decider as to whose image was engraved on these certificates. It just so happened the Secretary of the Treasury was a gentleman named Charles J. Folger at the time. Mr. Folger was a former New York State Senator and Chief Justice of the New York State Court of Appeals. And Secretary Folger was only there as Secretary of the Treasury from 1881 to 1884. But why Silas? How did he get on it? I mean, he joins Garfield as the 20th president on the $20 gold certificate. Thomas Benton, another one I want to look into, was a U.S. Senator for over 30 years, is on the 100. But we have Abe Lincoln on the $500 gold, Alexander Hamilton on the 1,000, James Madison on the 5,000, and Andrew Jackson on the $10,000 gold certificate. So I did a little bit more research. I even emailed the Bureau of Engraving and Printing. They have a historical office where you can send a note. And they didn't seem to know why he did. So a little bit more research, they came up with 3 theories. Governor Wright was still fondly remembered in New York. His early death made him something of an icon. Politicians were still using his name as leverage in the elections of New York in 1882 and thereabout. Fogler himself used Silas's name when he ran for and lost for governor. And or was Secretary Folger aiming to balance varying political parties between Democrats and the Republican Party was just coming into existence. 1882, yeah, it had established itself with Lincoln, but the intervening years from 1840s to 1882, there was still, so was he trying to balance it between the two opposing parties? Or was it just a fellow New Yorker honoring another New Yorker who was a central figure in New York? I tend to agree it was just Folger honoring one of his political idols, because it was almost 40 years after his death that he's honored like this. So I don't know if anybody else had found out anybody more, but that is what I found out. And now, of course, when I get a few $1,000s to 25,000 and find one of these bills, I'll sure to try to buy one. And that's about it. Any questions?
Did you get in touch with the St. Lawrence County Museum, Historical Society Museum?
Yeah, they just sent me this 10-page history of them that they have. And that's where I got mostly the other theories. They didn't have anything else. They just referred me to this little, well, it came to me in a PDF, but in this little booklet that they did. And that's where they came up with the 3 other theories of them. The reason he ended up in Canton is that's where his wife was from when he met his wife.
It's also county seat.
Yeah, and then the county seat up there when he was an attorney. Yeah. So I just find it interesting. Like I said, that other senator, I want to find out what he did. I understand 30 years in the Senate might gain you some honors way back then. But I mean, if you look at his political career, it's relatively short compared to now to be honored like that.
Yeah, interesting. Because as soon as you said his name, I knew of him and knew that his house was the historical society.
So, yeah, I never knew of him until, like I said, I started researching and going through the book here and looking at gold certificates. And I said, wait a minute, a governor of New York is on paper, gold certificate, not just paper money. It was payable in gold. So that was, I thought, pretty impressive.
Interesting.
Tim, I have a question. I see that the gold certificate, the serial number was 96,000, so there must have been quite a few of those that were made. Do you know if they actually were in commerce, or were they just like used for bank-to-bank situations?
Both. One theory on this one, since it was New York, it might have only been honored in New York, because some of the gold certificates were only honored in geographical areas. But they don't give me a total count. I mean, I could look into it, but there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 varieties of these. And some of them are worth 20,000 to 35,000. And then the more common ones are like 1,800 to 12,000. So, but I couldn't find a count, and I couldn't find who the engraver was. And the Bureau of Engraving didn't get back to me yet on the engraver, because first I sent him the first note. How did he end up? Who made the decision? Do you have any, research on that? And they said no. And then 2 weeks later, I said, well, who was the engraver? Because I started to blow up the picture and look at the engraving. And I said, this is a real piece of work here that they got. And but they never got back to me with that answer as to who the engraver was yet.
Well, those gold notes were used in circulation, primarily in California, where the gold fields were, but they were used all over the country. Now, you're looking at what, $1,000 bill. How many people had $1,000 in those days? Not too many. So, you know, it was a way of somebody holding on to a lot of money without putting it into a bank account.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
And banking at that point in time was the national banking system. And that was just beginning to become not only popular, but stable. Because up until the Civil War, banking was less than stable,
Right. Yeah.
unless you were in Ohio. And they had some stable banks there, but not very many other places. So yeah, they were used, but not necessarily in everyday commerce. Because what are you going to buy for $1,000?
Right.
You know, a $20 gold certificate. They were primarily used by people that wanted gold, but didn't necessarily want to hold the gold. So they had a gold certificate, easy to put in your pocket, carry around. And if you actually needed the gold, you took it to the treasury and they gave you gold.
Right. Yeah.
Up until I think those went out of, you could no longer get gold for them in 1933.
Right. Yeah.
When Roosevelt said, you know, nobody can own gold anymore. It was the same way with the silver certificates. You actually walked into a sub-treasury and they handed you silver, typically silver dollars, but in the 60s when they were still doing that, they'd give you a bag of silver dust.
A lot of weight to carry
Thanks,
around.
guys.